Most of us take sight for granted. It is one of the most important of our senses. The loss of eyesight is one of the most serious misfortunes that can befall anyone. But for millions around the world, it's a reality. So can advances in science and technology offer new hope? Visual disability comes in many forms, some more noticeable than others. And while the problem is always individual, in less industrialized societies without adequate medical support, it can afflict whole communities. The eye is a complex organ, made up of a number of component parts. At the front of the eye is the cornea, a transparent shield that allows light in. The amount of light is controlled by the iris before it reaches the lens. Controlled by muscles, the lens focuses the image onto the retina, much like a camera lens focuses light onto film in a camera. The retina responds to the light, and impulses are sent to the optic disc through the optic nerve to the brain. The eye and the brain act together to decode the world we live in.
That's gone!
In microseconds, we read the flight of a ball or people's responses. Different parts of the brain analyze color, fine detail, movement, and space. Our eyes are an integral part of a sophisticated visual system. If any component becomes diseased or damaged, the whole system can suffer. There are a huge variety of conditions worldwide which lead to sight loss. The statistics are daunting. Of the 180 million with visual disability, 45 million are considered blind. Of these, 80% are preventable or curable, and tragically, many of them are children. Throughout the world, one child goes blind every minute. Lack of vitamin A is a major cause. David Yorston is an ophthalmologist who has first-hand experience of the problems that exist in parts of Africa.
Thank you. This is Nuria. She's a 13-year-old girl who is blind from vitamin A deficiency. And unfortunately, there's nothing more that can be done for her at this stage. Immunization against measles would have prevented this, or just being given one capsule of vitamin A, cost of just a few cents, would have avoided this. But sadly, she's now blind, and there's nothing more that we can do about it. This is now incurable, untreatable blindness. This should never, ever have happened. This should not be happening.
The leading cause of blindness worldwide is cataract. It is most prevalent in Africa and Asia. Cataract is when the lens becomes cloudy and obstructs the passage of light entering the eye. David Yorston's team visiting Somalia treat as many cataract cases as possible. One of the objectives of this exercise is to train local doctors to provide a long-term solution.
I think skills transfer is the single most valuable thing that we can do, but also, it has to be said, we need money in the developing countries. There isn't the cash there to do these things.
For David Yorston, it's frustrating because it's relatively easy and inexpensive to treat patients. It only takes a few minutes for the cataract to be removed and replaced by an artificial lens.
Everybody that we take a cataract out of gets a lens implant at the same time. And that means that they may not have perfect vision afterwards, but they have good enough vision for normal daily living activities. They're no longer blind, and that's guaranteed. It's a very nice example of how the high-tech developments in a centre like Moorfields have, after a while, been transferred in an appropriate way to developing countries.
Moorfields Eye Hospital in London is one of the world's leading specialist hospitals. Here, Bruce Allen is developing new microsurgical procedures for removing cataracts, implanting the next generation of mass-produced artificial lenses.
What we're looking at here is a cataract being removed, and here it is being turned into a liquid by a high-frequency ultrasound probe. Now, the big difference between this and cataract surgery in days gone by is that instead of shelling the lens out like a pea, the hardened lens is turned into a liquid and removed through this tiny valve-type incision. This has been made possible by the development of flexible lens implants. Here the cataract has been removed, and the important point to appreciate is that we leave the capsule of the natural lens. Think of the skin of a grape and you'll have the right mental picture. And this lens capsule is left behind, or a bowl-shaped remnant of it is, and the lens is injected into this bowl-shaped remnant, and you're seeing the lens coming in here in the injector, and in a moment that's going to unfold into the eye. There we are.
Even with these new lenses, problems arise when scar tissue builds up on the lens capsule. The current solution is to use lasers.
What we're looking at here is what we do to treat this. At the moment we use a laser, and this laser is focused at a point in three-dimensional space. These two red aiming beams, when they're coincident, the laser is fired and the capsule tissues are taken apart, and here you're seeing that. What we'd like is a material solution which will prevent this scarring reaction happening. The way we're looking at that over in the laboratory is with an organ culture model of the lens capsule, and in essence what that is the natural lens capsule pinned out in a tissue culture dish with all the nutrients and so forth that the cells would require to grow in life. And so there's a very accurate model of the clinical situation and allows us to determine the effects of different materials and different drug treatments on this scarring reaction.
One issue was talked
Back in
very much
London
about
at the Institute
human
of
resource development
Ophthalmology,
in terms
which
of
is the
surgeons.
research partner of
But
Moorfields,
the fact is, we
David
know that
Yorston
surgeons
works
aren't
in his
always
teaching
busy all the
capacity.
time, are they?
He discusses some cataract
Why
issues
is
with
that?
eye specialists from around the world.
Bahula,
Some
you've done a
patients
lot of
need
this kind of
spectacles
work
after having
in
a cataract operation, and children can sometimes be a problem.
The biggest problem I have is that these children need to go back for refraction in Kikuyu. But you find that because...
By refraction, you mean being fitted with the right pair of glasses?
Yes.
So what happens in India? I mean, how could we improve the aftercare of these children that have had congenital cataract surgery?
Many times these children just don't get spectacles. So even if they get them, they don't put them on. And their parents aren't that motivated or knowledgeable enough to see that the child puts on the specs.
In many countries, spectacles are simply not available or affordable, even for simple short or long-sightedness. The main issue is how to provide spectacles with lenses of the appropriate prescription. At Oxford University, Professor Joshua Silver has come up with an invention modelled on the way in which human eye lenses work. He is not an optometrist, but an experimental physicist, and his approach was to look firstly at the problems to be solved.
You have something like around 40 million preventably blind people, and you have 1,000 million who have vision which needs correction. And I just look at the numbers. I say, wow, 1,000 million people who need vision correction don't have it yet. I made a few early lenses. In fact, they didn't work terribly well. I then actually made this lens here, and I pumped fluid in or out of the lens, and I found that I could correct my own vision.
Both the adjustable lens and the human lens comprise of an outer membrane with a flexible interior. Joshua Silver spent many years working on how his flexible lens could be turned into an effective pair of spectacles.
You end up with a device like this. This is an adjustable pair of spectacles. There we are. I've just now corrected my vision. Once you've screwed it down, you clamp this tube, and then you cut this off with a pair of scissors, and you sort of pull it off here. and you dispose of it, and you then end up with, well, you end up with a pair of spectacles that look somewhat like this. This is a slightly smaller variant of the same thing. So you end up at the end of the process with a pair of spectacles where you've effectively made each lens yourself to correct each of your eyes.
Testing in the lab is one thing, but how would the spectacles work in the hands of those who need them most? Joshua Silver went to Ghana to try them out.
There's a very interesting chap who was the head fisherman in a village. Because he was the sort of head man there, he needed to be able to read the official communications that came down from the government, and he also needed to be able to see to repair his fishing nets. He was also becoming presbyopic and so wasn't able to carry out these tasks, and we found that you provided him with a pair of glasses, he was able to do them immediately.
Can I have a look? Can you now see it at that distance?
Yes, it's big.
And is it clear?
Yeah, it's very, very clear.
Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I can read.
We actually believe that the right way to apply our technology is to make it sustainable. And when you make it sustainable, you don't just sort of make something and give it away as a charity. What you're really trying to do is to create an industry. And the aim of adaptive eye care is to get this technology to the populations that can benefit at a cost which is affordable. In the earlier device here, you see the frames are rather thick and heavy. We are working on a device which will have adaptive lenses with much thinner rims, and there will be pumps that deliver fluid to these lenses, which will be mounted in the side arms of a pair of spectacles. And what you'll be able to do is to switch, say, between using a computer and reading, doing close work.
The quest for better or even perfect sight takes us further into the commercial world. Laser surgery, already available at some high street opticians, takes away the need for spectacles altogether, at a cost. And the next generation of laser surgery is already being trialled back at Moorfields. Julian Stevens is involved in the development of wavefront technology, using reflected laser light for diagnosis and a surgical laser for optical correction. In the diagnostic procedure, a laser is fired into the eye through the pupil. This is reflected back from the retina. By monitoring and measuring the shape of the returning beam, Julian can pinpoint every optical aberration.
The wave method is just like throwing a stone into a pond and then looking at the ripples that come out. If it's a point source of light, the ripples are perfectly circular. But if anything slows down the ripples or speeds them up, then those ripples become distorted. And that's the basis of wavefront technology.
40,000 micromirrors in the computer help record highly detailed information of the patient's eyesight. This information is stored on a smart card for use in the actual operation.
And that information is then fed into the laser itself. So what we do is feed it into the card reader here in the laser, and then in about 3 to 5 seconds the laser's detected that, and it's uplinked, and effectively I'm ready to drive the laser. Well, that needs to be in the middle, so... and 6 seconds back again. The wavefront laser scan measures the optics of the whole eye, but the excimer laser to treat the optics actually only applies the treatment to the front of the eye, onto the cornea, which is the clear window at the front of the eye. I'm just going to lift the flap just here. Okay, so that makes your vision fuzzy just for a little while. Keep bright light down for a moment. Okay, I'll just take off the plastic. There we are. At the present time, wavefront treatment is available only to very special groups of people, and that's people who have poor vision, where the optics of the eye can be corrected with a custom laser treatment. Wavefront technology is not actually very expensive, and it's been in the astronomical community for a number of years, and so it is possible to build wavefront scanners quite economically. It means that those in developing countries where resources are very tight will almost certainly have wavefront technology before too long.
But these laser treatments are unlikely to address the real problems worldwide. Corneal blindness results from trachoma. Trachoma is the second major cause of blindness worldwide. It is a severe, chronic eyelid and corneal infection, most often spread by flies. It leads to the clouding of the cornea, which breaks up the light on entering the eye. At Moorfields, Bruce Allen is exploring the implantation of artificial corneas that will combine with human tissue.
There's a drive to develop an artificial cornea, or an artificial clear window to the front of the eye. And here is the clear optic portion in the center, and here's a thin annular skirt. And that's porous, and the tissues of the eye wall can integrate with this skirt and stabilize the device in the eye. And at the very end of the operation, we've pulled over a flap of surface tissue to allow the device to heal into place.
It is hoped that these techniques using biomaterials for trachoma surgery will revolutionize treatment in less industrialized countries.
We found out that
But in many
Kenya,
communities where trachoma is rife, doctors
given,
have to address a number of
the
issues,
person trained should come from
including
the community
traditional
themselves.
beliefs.
Because if you don't train people, trachoma shows richness, especially in the nomadic community. They show people who has got trachoma, who's got a lot of flies on his face. It shows the number of animals they have. So that really explains.
It is perhaps presumptuous to think that all cultures should accept modern medicine without question. Many who are blind or partially sighted feel more comfortable using traditional remedies.
Why do they use the traditional herbs rather than going to your nice eye clinic?
They think that if you put, let's say, medicine in the eye and you feel pain, that means that the medicine is good. Yes, yes.
We hear a lot about Chinese herbal medicine these days.
Yeah, Chinese herbal medicine are very famous because we have 5,000 years history for the medicine. But you know, it's used to treat eye disease with Chinese herbal medicine.
What about in Vietnam?
The traditional healers, they have her own opinion.
The best thing to do with traditional healers is not to scold them, but to incorporate them in our healthcare system. What we need to do is just to put ideas into these traditional healers of modern medicine. In fact, we can even give them the eye drops, those that we think they can use.
But even in the more industrialized world, where modern medicine can provide the most up-to-date treatments, there are many who cannot be helped. John Welsman and Anne Fairweather have incurable conditions.
I was born with partial sight due to over-oxygenation or German measles, we're not really sure. Had cataracts up to the age of 11 and was able to ride a bike around and things like that. At the age of 12 I got glaucoma, which caused my retinas to be destroyed, and eventually by the age of 18 I'd lost my sight completely.
I was born visually impaired. It's a genetic condition, recessive genetic condition, and hadn't sort of appeared in my family until myself and my sister, sort of completely out of the blue. So I have, in one eye particularly, a small field of central vision, and that's actually slightly blurred. So it's manageable for some things, but sort of fairly restricted for others, like dull light.
Although John is totally blind, his disability doesn't stop him from leading a normal life. For him, orientation is a primary concern.
I think the one difficulty that blind and partially sighted people experience quite a lot of the time is finding out where they are and finding out where they want to go in relation to where they are.
A navigational device helps John find his way around this huge shopping centre. These infrared transmitters trigger a receiver that delivers a set of options to John's earpiece.
For Winter Garden and shops to John Lewis, turn right. For Water Circus and shops to House of Fraser, turn left.
To complement the ceiling transmitters, a development is underway using the latest satellite technology.
Left turn ahead.
Similar to the geopositioning satellite systems currently used in some motor vehicles, this device could eventually help orientate any blind person anywhere in the world.
You have arrived. Turn right. Then you have arrived.
Someone who's quite mobile like myself could use a global positioning type system to find my way down streets and know when to turn left, when to turn right, how many paces away a certain building would be, a restaurant or an office that I needed to go to.
Anne has similar concerns, but she's not totally blind. What does she hope medical science or technology could do for her?
Give me transplanted eyes would be a start, I think, for science and technology. It's very unlikely, though.
In reality, what is the likelihood of regenerating sight for someone in Anne's situation? In many degenerative conditions, it is the rods and cones, the photoreceptors of the retina, which become damaged. This is common in the aging process and can also be caused by genetic problems. In the variety of degenerative conditions here, the damage could have been caused by malfunctioning genes. One way medical scientists believe that they may be able to treat some of these conditions is to replace the cells that have damaged genes with cells that have normal genes. The use of stem cells is one of a number of ways that are being explored.
Stem cells are cells in the body that can give rise to various tissue types. For example, brain, heart, muscle, bone, blood. In theory, we could use stem cells to try to grow rods and cones that had been damaged through some degenerative disease. We're learning where those embryonic stem cells are. And if I take this example of a human eye here, if you open it up and you look at the retina on the two surfaces, this is the back of the retina and this is the front of the retina near where the lens is. In between the pigment epithelium, which is this dark tissue here, and the pink tissue, which is the retina, towards the very front of the eye, that's where stem cells are located in animals, and we think they're there in humans too.
Whilst they haven't yet been seen in human eyes, we can see here stem cells replicating in the eye of a fish.
It's been observed in mammals that when stem cells are injected into the brain, those stem cells migrate to the right places and give rise to the appropriate cell types. So, in theory, retinal stem cells would be injected into the retina. The daughters of those stem cells would migrate to the right places in the retina, differentiate into rods and cones, and fix the disease.
It may be that in the future, Anne could benefit from stem cell treatment. So how does she view this prospect?
From a social point of view, it would be one incredible change in status. I mean, you'd have to relearn how to do everything, just in the same way that you'd have to relearn if you lost your sight. It would be quite a trauma.
For Anne and millions of other blind and partially sighted people around the world, living with their condition is the only option at present, although there are a number of ways of coping. Greater awareness of sight loss is fundamental to alleviating the problems, even though science and technology are creating breakthroughs in treatment.
We have the opportunity now, at the beginning of the 21st century, to eliminate avoidable blindness within the next 20 years.
Different causes of blindness worldwide can be targeted with public health measures and collaboration is key to eliminating needless sight loss.
Now we've got the technology, we've got the tools, we need the resources to finish the job.
Visual disability has profound consequences in all societies. Sight loss is a global issue.